You're not just your body. Actually, you're not your body at all. You're inhabiting your body. Your soul is inhabiting your body. You are a soul. This body has a beginning, a middle, and end, but the soul does not. Now, the soul to express itself needs fuel, it needs power, just like our physical body needs power. So the aura, in a sense, is the fuel of our evolution. Hi, my name's Dimitri Moraitis, and I'm on Your Superior Self.
Ooh, buddy, I like that. Dimitri, thank you so much for taking the time. Funny enough, I just got back from Cali and we essentially probably have crossed paths without knowing it. So thank you for taking the time. I'm on the back on the East Coast now. It's a shame that we couldn't have an in-person conversation, but thank you for taking the time this morning to have a little chat.
Oh, my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk about your journey and your path to
Okay.
spiritual awakening journey. I think I've listened to a ton of hours of interviews that you've done. You've done a
Oh,
ton of
yeah.
podcasts and speaking events publicly. But I want to really start off this conversation with like your journey. Like,
Yeah.
what did that look like? Your upbringing, your background prior to the awakening, and then specifically what the awakening looked like.
Well, boy, thank you. Yeah. Well, this is an era of spiritual awakening, right? Where more people than ever before are having their spiritual growth. I was born in Denver, Colorado, raised in the Midwest. My parents were of Greek origin. My father, a doctor. We were kind of a small family. They immigrated to the United States, so we had no extended family. And it was kind of the four of us, and we moved around a lot, kind of when we were young. When I was young, my mom was very artistic. My father, of course, kind of a scientist, being a doctor. So I leaned more to the scientific artistic. I was playing piano from a very young age. And then I got really fascinated with movie making. And I thought, well, I was actually pursuing that as my career as I grew up. I came of age in the Chicago Midwest area. I call Chicago a big little town. It's huge, but it's got this kind of more small town mentality. So it was a good place to grow up. And then, really, if you're going to do this, I went to NYU, New York University in New York for film school. But if you're really going to make it, you have to go to California. So I went to California, to Los Angeles, and it was it was actually starting to click. Things were starting to happen. But in the artistic world, you're always kind of trying to tune into that thing you can't put your finger on, whether it was a great idea or something for a story for a movie or whatever. And of course, with music, you're always kind of listening to that inner voice. And so I was having what I call these inspiration moments. I didn't know what metaphysics was at that point, but it kind of came and went like the wind. It was this moments of heightened awareness, very clear, very grounded, nothing woo woo or out there. They were beautiful, right? And they got so strong. At one point, it was just this profound transformation of perception of things. And I still didn't even have a name for it, but that was my awakening. I call it my Saul in the Road to Damascus moment. Then when I realized, oh, this is metaphysics, I couldn't get enough of it. And of course, Los Angeles is a good area when you're interested in that kind of stuff compared to being in Chicago. So I was researching everything I could, but something said, be careful about, joining a group. And then I was dating somebody and we had just broken up. And suddenly she calls me on the phone and says, oh, I know you really love this stuff. There's a woman that's going to do a meditation at a dinner. Would you like to come over? And initially I was going to say, no, I mean, I was thinking the relationship is over. I don't want to go there. But then some said, go, So I went and Barbara was there. She did a meditation. First time I meditated, it felt like an ancient door opening up again. It felt actually bizarrely familiar, but it was the first time I ever meditated. And afterwards, I did start to kind of pour my heart out a little bit because I had all these questions. I thought we had a great conversation. Barbara later joked, oh boy, you really interrogated me that first night. But she was giving language to what I was experiencing. But also I realized, oh my God, you're talking from your own experiences. And that night I knew she was my teacher. She's a generation ahead of me. Was part of the greatest generation. And then we jumped in. I jumped into the deep end of the swimming pool right away. I was just like a sponge. I just couldn't get enough of it. Um, but I also started to realize, wow, this is not just a personal journey. I think this is meant to be my life's work. So I started the rather difficult transition from movies to metaphysics. I like to say, movies is a jealous mistress. She wants all of you, and so it was very hard to kind of do both. I was trying, and I had some great contacts in the business, and they thought I lost my mind, right? That I was getting in this other stuff, but I really knew this was the way I had to go. So eventually we decided, well, we got to compile all these teachings. Yeah, Barbara, there were no books. There was nothing at that time. And we started to. And then there was another realization. Not only was it sort of meant to be my career, but I was also meant to teach. And Barbara was actually training me to carry on the tradition when her time. So she started to train me in kind of the inner life. When you're a spiritual teacher, you have to kind of develop more systematically that inner life. And on top of the knowledge that you're sharing. And that started the nonprofit, the Spiritual Arts Institute. And then from there, we just started, we were writing books after books. I just to let your audience know, Barbara did just recently pass on at 94. And I can tell you the night before she passed, we were doing stuff on the book and the classes. So one thing you want to do in your life, keep doing what you love to your last day on earth, and it's going to be a great life. You may retire from a career, but you're never retiring from life. So, keep going with whatever it is that fascinates you. And one of the messages I always say, if you're listening to this and you've had your awakening, that's not an accident. That's the divine knocking on your door, and please pursue it. There's a reason that happened.
I love all of that. Funny enough, the book is open right now. So the book, the Barbara that you keep referring to is Barbara Martin. The book that you're referring to, well, one of the books that I read is Change Your Aura, Change Your Life. And it's funny, I opened the book up just kind of randomly, and it's like unhappy at work. So it gives like a meditative practice for courage and finding your path, which I think is really cool that you just talked about that. But going back to your awakening process, was there anything that you were doing to kind of set that up, or what was it that you were practicing at that time that kind of catalyzed that awakening? Was it meditation, or were you just kind of
No,
like there?
I wasn't even thinking about, I didn't even know what metaphysics was. So now, as a Greek, you're born Greek Orthodox, but we weren't really even very religious, but we also weren't anti-religious. No, it was sort of, well, again, I think my preparation was more the creative. I think the way the divine reached me first was to kind of open the creative channels, the artistic channels. And that paved the way. And also, I was thinking, my thinking was, didn't just want to make any kind of movie. I wanted to make these visionary movies. So there was already something going in there that was kind of different. But yes, sometimes now, look, some people's awakening from a very early age, they're already kind of interested in these things. And so, but that doesn't mean they're doing anything about it yet, right? So
Mhm.
they can have these experiences, ding, 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 ding. And then at some point they say, I got to do something about it. Barbara's teacher, which was highly mystic, she had all these clairvoyant skills, but it wasn't until she almost died from, she had poisoning from tainted lettuce. And literally, here she is lying in the hospital bed going, God save me and I'll dedicate the rest of my life to you. And that's what happened. She got over it, and then she became a teacher. So we all have these turning points. And, the thing with the awakening, we don't really have control over it. People sometimes ask, well, how can I have a spiritual awakening? They say, well, this isn't something I did. It's something that happened to me. So this is why we also have to realize we're not pursuing our spiritual aspirations alone. There is a divine process that is supporting everything that's going on. It's a cooperative. The Talmud says for every blade of grass, there's an angel bending over saying, grow. So once we realize we're part of a greater process of life, then part of our journey is to simply cooperate with it, to allow it to come into our own consciousness, realize I'm not pursuing the things in my life just by myself. The divine is part of this process. And what you're really trying to do is awaken that inner self, awaken the awareness. The inner self is already there, but the awareness of it is not always there. We get caught up in our persona and we forget who the real self is. You know, in the Hindu metaphysics, it's called the Atman. When you awaken to the trueness of who you are, the soul becomes the Atmanic self, the awareness. And you hear, like Yogananda talked about, self-realization, not the little s, not the little self, but the real self, the true self.
If you had to put words to it, I know it's very hard to describe. Some people say it's ineffable, but like the awakening, the symptoms of awakening, like what you were experiencing, how you described it to Brenda, like what did she say that you were experiencing?
Brenda, I'm sorry, say that last part again.
So when you were describing your experiences to her about
Okay,
what you were
Barbara.
experiencing,
Oh,
Barbara,
okay.
sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
Barbara, what were some of those experiences like in your reality? Like what were
Well,
you?
you see, Barbara was already kind of understanding almost even before I spoke what was happening. She could see it in my auric field. So she would start talking about aspects of the aura. Like, for example, okay, we have to talk a little bit about the auric field to kind of understand this. You're not just your body. Actually, you're not your body at all. You're inhabiting your body. Your soul is inhabiting your body. You are a soul. This body has a beginning, a middle, and end, but the soul does not. Now, the soul, to express itself, needs fuel, it needs power, just like our physical body needs power. So the aura, in a sense, is the fuel of our evolution. We all have the spiritual power emanating from us. And just like the body has this intricate, fascinating construction, the aura is even more intricate and fascinating than the physical body in construction. There's so much piece. It's not like you're a green and I'm a blue. And there are many different facets, each color, each hue, each placement, all of it has a positioning in the auric field and it reveals something. So if you have a strong lemon yellow energy around the head area, you've got a good intellect. If you've got a lot of deep rose pink in the aura, you're a loving, kind person. All these kinds of facets, and sometimes we're a conundrum. For example, you can be in love with somebody and you've got the deep rose pink of love there, but you've also got the avocado green of jealousy. You can be loving somebody and jealous of them at the same time. These two sort of non-complementary energies can be existing. We call that sort of the mixed aura. But to what you're asking about is there are aspects of our aura that are really part of the divine us. And for example, one of the things I love about the aura so much is we take these metaphysical principles we hear about, but in the aura, they have a location. So, for example, how many of all of us, if we study metaphysics, have heard the higher self? You have a higher self. Well, where is that higher self? Is it in you? Is it around you? Where is it? Well, in the aura, there's an actual location. It's a chakra point about 2 feet above your head. It's actually outside the auric shell. And this higher self is what we're aspiring to reach. It's not just a place of bringing down light, it's a place of higher consciousness. So, what happens is when you start experiencing some of these higher states, you're really kind of going into these higher points. And that's what's giving you these experiences.
Mm,
So that's where you start to understand, oh, I see. I was accessing a different part of I wasn't, but the divine was giving me an experience of these different aspects of my consciousness so that they were, by the way, these experiences are not just, oh, isn't that fun? They're always teachers. So in a sense, what they were teaching is a couple of things. These are essentially my first lessons, even before meeting Barbara, is number one, you have these higher states of awareness that you can attain, and you're not achieving them by yourself. They're also introducing the divine support system, because when the divine comes around you, they bring their own vibration.
mm,
And so that's how you're getting kind of, people say, oh, I want to see the angels. Well, it's great to see things, but more important, you want to be in their presence, the energetic presence, because that can never be counterfeited, that can never be misunderstood. So these are some of my most important lessons. Then when you're doing your own meditations, you're realizing part of it is to recreate in a more systematic way. I was sharing with you, these were happening to me. I had no control over this. But when you start working with it and you start meditating, you realize it's still in the highest control, but you can more systematically prepare for it. I think of this like kind of like inspiration. You cannot command inspiration. You cannot say, today I'm going to get that great idea. you know. But what you can do is set up the environment in your consciousness so that inspiration can flow more readily.
Oh, I love all of that. Yeah, there's so many questions that I have right now. So did she teach you how to see the aura, or do you have to be
Well,
born with that gift?
okay. So what we like to say is seeing the aura is a byproduct of your spiritual evolution. So there is no book, there is no 5 easy steps to seeing the aura. Yes, there are techniques to maybe see, colors here and there, and we've done some of those, and that's fun when that happens. But that's not really seeing the aura, right? What you want to do is focus on your spiritual evolution. So as you start awakening the inner presences within you, it's not just clairvoyance. You start tuning into the higher. There's a sort of um, a call it a telepathy, a mediatorship. There are all these things that start to happen as you come. So as you kind of elevate your consciousness, the higher can slowly step down. The lesson they give is, look, we'll do 3/4 of the work. We'll step down our vibration to meet you, but you've got to do your quarter of the work. You've got to step up your vibration to meet us. So there's a lot of work we have to do. Now, when all the mystics will tell you, before the doors to the inner life open, you have to be purified. In other words, we can't, we have to come in there with an open and ready heart. Because let's face it, what if you got some things in your aura that aren't so great? Are you ready really to see all that? you know, you think you are until that actually starts to happen. So let's clear that
Yeah.
stuff out. Okay. Let's kind of, Barbara would say it wasn't always great seeing the aura as a kid, because sometimes my parents were arguing and I could see the discordant energy beyond the verbal exchange. I could see this discordant energy. So you've got to be prepared for that. Now, Barbara, we called her the Mozart of metaphysics, because that was just an extraordinary, exceptional talent. And some say, well, you can only be born with this. Well, it certainly helps if you are, but no, it is something you can develop. We're all potentially clairvoyant. And another thing to remember about clairvoyance, it's not just about seeing, it's about, when you're truly clairvoyant in the mystic sense of the word, you are sort of stepping into the divine process of life, because these energies are around us right now, whether we're seeing them or not. So it's not just about seeing pretty colors and things like that. So if you're stepping into the spiritual processes of life through your clairvoyance, it means you're also starting to partake of it and be of it. So again, there are these long preparation periods. In the ancient Hebrew mystics, they use the term Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. And this was their term for enlightenment. So they were saying, once one is purified, they enter into this heightened awareness, and then a whole new world starts to open up.
Mm. I just recently picked up the Gospels of St. Thomas and was reading the teachings of Yeshua. And funny enough, right, another coincidence here, one of uh, the theologians that he speaks of is, I reveal my mysteries to those who become worthy, essentially expanding your capacity to receive
Exactly.
the divine. And through meditation, through these practices, you're able to cleanse that aura. You're able to cleanse a lot of that, what is clogging up trauma, programming, things of that nature, to help you receive the mysteries, essentially. And so, is it through meditation, or is it through affirmations? Like, how do we cleanse that aura to receive more of the divine?
Well, it's interesting you're reading that sayings gospel, because it's so we do classes at the institute, and one of them is on the metaphysical Bible. Yeah, and to understand that there were mystical teachings. The book wasn't just a religious text, and especially the ones that didn't make it into the formal canon. A lot of them were mystical, and what you're describing is exactly how they taught about the inner mysteries during those ancient days. And yes, it is you're describing exactly the process that they were going through, the gnosis, the spiritual knowing, right? So the whole idea was that was an era of reawakening the spiritual mysteries in a new context, right? In this new sort of Christed that Christ is a Greek word meaning anointed. So it was the whole idea. They were showing these secret ways. Now, in those days, you didn't have, like, the internet, of course. You didn't have, most people didn't even have, there weren't really books as we know them then. So they would write in this kind of not secret. Well, not it was secret, but in this almost like symbolic way. So you could remember this particular saying, but locked in that saying was like an equation. Here's step one, here's step two, here's step three, here's step four. And then that gave you the idea of how you had the process to begin to awaken that inner life.
It's kinda
Yeah,
like reality, right? Like, where you see things as face value, like, we're taught to be very analytical and see things at the surface level, but if you go deeper into reality, you'll see patterns, numbers, things that will pop up,
yeah,
the
yeah,
golden ratio, like, just
right,
coincidences,
right.
numbers that reappear, and so you start questioning, "What is that?" Right? So when I read the Gospel of Thomas, sometimes I'm scratching my head, I'm like, "What in the world did he mean by that?" Right? But then if you look deeper into the meaning metaphorically, what he was speaking about, like, then it starts to make sense, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. Now, also interesting you brought that up. So this is the third edition of the book. It's the 25th anniversary, and it is going to be a thick book. We keep adding chapters each time. But what's I love about what's happening now is, the book is a lot about, like you said, helping yourself at your job or your finances or your relationships. But is that all it's about? And of course, the answer is no. There is a greater, all these things as you start strengthening all these parts of your life, it's adding up to something even greater, what we call the transcendent consciousness. And that's exactly what you're touching on, the idea, okay, if I really am this soul that's not material, not made up of atoms and physical energy, well, how come I'm not aware of that right now? Well, in a way you are, but the other piece of it is you have to awaken that awareness. So the idea is that through the training of the gnosis, you can start to awaken your personal awareness of the inner life, and that's the mystics call that the reality. When we think of physical life, the material existence is all there is, and there's nothing else. The metaphysician would say that's an illusion. That's like saying, okay, the visible light spectrum and the electromagnetic spectrum is all there is. There's nothing else, just this little bandwidth right here, when in fact it's far more vast. So what we're trying to do is not deny the physical, but to put the physical in its proper perspective.
Hmm. I'm very curious now, like, how do you experience reality? Like, when you're walking through your everyday life, like, what does that look like?
Well, remember, part of the journey is your ability to, shall we say, shift gears. Let me give an example. Barbara was not always clairvoyant. She could turn it off. She said, I would go nuts if I was clairvoyant 24/7, right? Because it's too much energy. And especially if it wasn't pleasant, you'd be like constantly overwhelmed. So one of the most amazing things, and this shows you anybody that's really skilled at something, they make it seem effortless. So you could kind of turn it on and off at will. So what I've developed too is this ability, okay, when I go into meditation, I can go into these deep states, but I've also got to live on this planet Earth. So I've got to be able to shift gears, be able to deal with the cares of life. Oh, the plumbing just broke in the house, stuff that just happens. That's life, and then take care of it, and then be able to go into that spirit state again. Some people are very good at the inner life, but they can't even handle basic cares of life. Some are really good at handling life, but they can't retreat from it to get into the inner self. The two most common complaints we have when people start to meditate is, oh, I don't have time to meditate, or I can't concentrate, I got the monkey mind. So what you've got to be able to do is, well, you're going to make time for what's important in your life. So if meditation is your one-on-one time with the divine, you want to make time for that. Don't make it an afterthought, make it the centerpiece of your day. So that's your ability to say, no, I don't care how busy my life is, how much is going on. I can retreat. I can get back in that silence. And then as far as the monkey mind, we got to remember our mind is like a muscle. And if you're strong, if the muscle of your mind is strong, then you can focus it without deviation. But if you notice, oh God, I'm just all over the place, it's like a weak muscle. Okay, my right hand is strong, my left hand is weak. Well, you just got to what? You just got to strengthen it. That's all there is. And you get those two things going, make time for the divine, learn to focus your attention, and then some of these inner things do start to beautifully awaken.
Hmm. Does the aura, like, does it hold all the memory of our past, even past lives?
Well, there is what we have. What's called the aura. is of our, we're born with an auric energy, although it's kind of a little, the energies are not as strong as obviously. Actually, it takes a while for the aura to fully engage, just like the body grows. First 7 years before the aura is even fully engaged. This is why very young children, what did someone say? Give me the first 7 years of a person's life and you can have the rest. Because so many patterns are established in those first 7 years. There's every time a parent needs to really spend time with their kids, it's that first 7 years to help get the rhythms, going right there. Now, it's not that you can't change something later, but it's harder. But as far as memory, there's a part of our consciousness, well, it's called the subconscious. It's a part of our mind. Where I'm working on the next book now on consciousness from the spiritual perspective, right? My God, everybody's with artificial intelligence and all this stuff. The question of consciousness is coming up more than ever. Now, we have a subconscious, which is the seat of memory. And yes, it is recording everything verbatim, as we are experiencing it. And it doesn't judge. It doesn't say, I don't like this experience, I'm not recording it. Just like this is being recorded now, the system isn't saying, I'm editing this part out. You may choose to edit it out, but the system isn't doing that. So in the same way, we have these memories and we need them, right? Because if we didn't have a subconscious, we'd have to relearn how to brush our teeth. We'd have to learn how to walk every day. We'd have to learn the basic things all over. But the challenge with the subconscious is it records memory. And let's say we've had a very traumatic experience, we can relive that. I mean, this is what post-traumatic stress is all about. You can be on a battlefield going through the horrors of a battle. The physical danger is over. You're not in the line of fire anymore, but you keep reliving that through your subconscious. So that's where the healing is needed. Another big part of working with the aura is you can heal it. So you can heal that memory, that painful memory of whatever it was, so it isn't haunting you anymore. And that's a big part of our work, because many times we are carrying baggage from the past and we don't realize we're not our experiences. Don't define yourself by your experiences. You are this immortal spark of life. Experiences are part of the learning lessons of life. So what you're supposed to understand is, what am I learning from this experience, whether it's painful or whether it's pleasureful?
I love that. So the healing, what modalities what techniques do you use to heal, the
We
aura?
work with divine light. We work with the divine energies. So in other words, if I have an emotional distress, if I'm upset by something, for example, one strong outburst of anger can linger for 2 weeks in the auric field. That's how strong emotions are without
Wow.
dealing with it, right? And this is why when you start getting angry, there's a tendency to get angry again, right? Because the momentum starts building. And in the aura, it comes through as sort of this dirty, vitiated red. It is not a pleasant energy. So you don't need to see the aura to know, I got really pissed off today. I probably have some, vitiated red in my aura. You can start meditating to bring in the energies to release that anger and frustration. But of course, you have to permit it to happen. You can't, it's just like, say, forgiveness. I forgive you. If I ever do it again, I'll never forgive you as long as I live. You've got to really forgive, right? And that's often the hardest part. But as we're willing to let that light come in, we can release these energies. You don't have to stay angry. You don't have to stay upset. You don't have to stay frustrated. Those are choices that we're making. And it's only debilitating your auric field. Why? Is it really worth it? Is it really helping you? I tell people now, I don't have the luxury of an unenlightened emotion. It's too exhausting and it's not productive. I have to release it. And it took energy to be upset. I have to rebuild the auric energy again. Was it worth it? Greeks love to be emotional and all that kind of stuff. It's a Mediterranean thing. It really isn't worth it many of the time. I mean, you want to be expressive emotionally, but not venting and raging and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So how do you do you catch yourself because of the work that you put in? Like when you
Oh,
see
yeah,
yourself
yeah,
start
yeah,
going
yeah.
down that rabbit hole or whatever, like,
Absolutely. Well, we know the tricks, right? If you feel like getting angry, count to 10. So if you can catch yourself when you feel like you're getting triggered, then you can prevent a lot of mishaps for yourself. Oh no, I definitely watch it. And if I notice, something did kind of tip my canoe, I right away go into meditation. Well, maybe not that second, but as soon as I can, I go into meditation and I stay there till that energy is gone, till I release it. I don't want any momentum to build, because it's sort of like just clouds your whole perspective. You can be having a great day, right? something upsets you. Okay, it was an incident, but you notice it changes the rhythm of the whole rest of your day,
Sure.
right? It's just you're in a different frame of mind because it kind of redirected the current. So we like to say, look, it's not what's happening in your life that's the measure of your spiritual maturity. It's how you're handling what's happening in your life. You are in complete control of that.
Hmm. How does our aura affect our realities, right? Like if I do the work, clean it out, cleanse it, and I start doing different meditations and working with different lights, like let's say abundance or prosperity, like how does that change my
Yeah, yeah.
reality?
Well, the reason that we called the book Change Your Aura, Change Your Life is that if the energy, the spirit, now we're talking in spiritual energy, if the spiritual energy to make something manifest in your life is in your aura, if that power has built up, it will show up in your life. That's the divine law. Okay. But you have to, and if it's not in your aura, you can't just say, oh, cry in your soup. The power's just not there. You got to build it. You know, we lived in Los Angeles for many years. And that's, of course, a company town with entertainment and all of that. And people would come saying, gee, am I going to be successful in my career? Am I going to make it as an actor or writer or whatever? Sometimes the answer was, you got to build up more creative power. Barbara's oldest son, Philip, was an opera singer. Fantastic when he had like a voice like Caruso. But, you know, of course, he was born with that talent, but he didn't have a career yet. And as he was a young man, training and studying and developing everything, she would look at his aura and she saw the powers getting so strong. Eventually, she said, he's going to start his career soon. And that's exactly what happened. So, yes, you want to build up prosperity. Do you know, or the audience know, in your aura, there's a color energy of prosperity. It comes through as turquoise. So if you're having, now we all have money things once in a while, but if you're having chronic money issues, there's something you need to do to turn things around. Don't play the role of the victim. Don't say, oh, I just got the short end of the lollipop. All right. Well, you might have been put in a challenging situation, but that's your opportunity to turn that around. I love the fact that the Chinese symbol, the character for opportunity, is the same one as crisis. So a crisis, when viewed properly, is an opportunity.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. That's fascinating. I didn't know
Yeah,
that at all. It's all in how you look at it, right?
exactly. Your attitude is everything. If
Sure.
you,
The choice.
we tell people, please avoid the doom and gloom scenarios. That's not the way the divine sees the world. That's the projection of our own fears and worries.
Projection of all our past experiences, and if we continue to live in that, then our future will be like our past.
Yeah, if it's unpleasant, well, yes. I mean, if you start talking about karma, the choices you made in the past have brought you to where you are today. So you're not happy with your today. Look at the choices you've already made. And
Sure.
the choices you're making right now are deciding your tomorrow.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's rewiring that brain, that those connections of that you've created over your life and the programs, and maybe you identified with your story all the way, and you think that is you and who you are. It's really taking a step back. And I say this now, like confidently and like on the show, but I struggle with that too. Like I fall deep into the drama, and it takes me a day or two, reading Yogananda, reading the Gospel of Thomas, reading books like you and Barbara have created to really get me back on track, because it's so easy to fall into those patterns because it feels good. It feels good sometimes to be the victim. Honestly, if I'm being completely honest, like the neurotransmitters and the chemical releases in the body, like, it's how we evolved. I mean, as the human species, and like being able to take a step back and really try to change your thoughts and your feelings to rewire your brain to have a different experience. Like it's harder than what it seems. Have you been able
Oh,
to do that
oh,
for
yeah.
yourself?
Well, look, you bring up a lot of things there. First of all, in a way, quite frankly, it's easier to play the victim because it causes you to take less action, right? Okay, this is just the way it is. I can't do anything about it. But if you realize I can do something about it, then you've got like the cowardly lion from the Wizard of Oz. You got to have the courage to do something about it, right? So, but also you're talking about, okay, we do have these instinctual patterns, and we've had them from ages as a species, right? But you're also now what? You're trying to live by a different set of laws. You're trying to live by the laws of spirit. And that's what Yogananda was teaching. How can I, okay, the Bible says, I hit you, you hit an eye for an eye, but that didn't mean I hit you, you hit me right. I mean, you hit me, I hit you right back. It means if I poke your eye out, I will experience blindness myself as part of my life lesson. Now, you and I had a little moment to talk before we came on the air, and you were telling me, I think you said you're raising 3 kids with your wife. So some people say, I'll get into my spiritual journey after the kids are raised, after I'm retired, later on. But it's so commendable what you're doing, because you want to kind of seek God while you're in the mix of being a dad, being a husband, being a professional. You don't have to wait till that phase of your life is not over, but more settled, because in that struggle is where you're really forging your spiritual metal. Because if you can find that God stillness while, hey, Dad, something's wrong over here, all the things that are going on right now, then that means you're going to be so much the stronger, and you're passing on to your family. Your
Mhm.
family is getting the spiritual benefits, even if they don't completely understand maybe what you're doing. So there's an expression in the Bible, seek God early. So when you have your awakening, now in my case, I was not yet married when I had my awakening. So it would have been a different story if I had been and I had kids. I was young, it was in my 20s. I was still kind of the free bachelor kind of living, but it doesn't matter when in our life our awakening happens. That means those are the opportunities based on that, but you got to keep pursuing it. I'm sure you're noticing, okay, you're struggling with it at times, but then when you conquer something, when you do turn back to the divine, you're really much stronger for it, because you went through that rhythm. We had one lady, she was a single mom, a doctor, and raising 2 kids on her own. And she said, gee, when am I going to meditate? I mean, at work, I'm just going 90 miles an hour. When I get home, the kids are all over me, and then I'm exhausted. When am I going to meditate? So she decided, oh, I'm going to leave the house a half hour early. I'm just going to sit in my car before I go into the office. And she didn't do that forever, but that's for a period of time. She did that because she had to make that happen. Even Barbara, she was in a household with so much activity. She said, sometimes I had to go into the closet to meditate because it was the quiet spot in the house.
I know exactly what she means. I've locked myself in the closet many times. But to your point, we were just talking about this pre-chat where, I go to Cali for vacation and I come back and I plug myself into the matrix. Like, it is taking a step out of that energy of that grind and stepping into and reconnecting with the divine. Like, I've really become curious about like the indigenous cultures and how they were able to see the divine in everything, and like really tying back that practice into my life, where I'm at the ocean and really connecting with that energy and seeing the dolphins, and it sounds lovely, but like really realizing that is the divine. Like, every breath that I take, even right now, like I'm breathing that in, and I'm
Right.
connecting with that. And even when I go for runs, like just looking at everything as connectedness. And then it's easy to forget when you come back and you got to, punch the clock, and you got to start have conversations about performance and one-on-ones and, budget cuts and all of these different things.
Right.
It can throw you off that connectedness. And it's like you fall back into the drama. And then it's like, then I got to go back and read Yogananda, about how life is an illusion, right? Like, this is a Maya, this is a play. But just, not that this world isn't real. I mean, it is real, it is physical, but it's also the drama that's illusory. It is the plays that I play in my mind, the conversations that I have in my mind that I think are happening, but in reality, it's just me making that up and buying more into that story. Meditation for me has been a game changer, and that I've been
Yeah.
able to
Yeah. Yeah.
be able to draw back when the stories play a little bit more. I am becoming a more of a conscious creator, like really
There you go.
practicing quantum jumping, like going into my meditations and my imagination and these quantum states, and like going into the future and seeing that highest timeline that I want to achieve and communicating with that. And then learning how to integrate that information back into this reality, like bringing forth that energy. But the mind comes into play, and I start thinking about like what I should be doing, this and that. And we get caught up in that thinking that we're only mind, but we're also body. So what I love about this book is it helps me think about the auric field, and then the aura in itself, and how I can cleanse that. But also the body is also part of that equation, like cleansing that trauma that's in the body, that's in the muscles, that's in the fascia, to allow that information that I was receiving in those meditations to integrate that back into this reality, so I can become that more, so I can get the energy
Mhm.
of prosperity from the divine to bring it into my auric field, and so that I can attract more things into my life. Now, I'm curious, like, when you started doing, I mean, I don't know if you have, but have you started doing these practices with prosperity and abundance? And then, like, what was the result of this, like using the divine light in your reality?
Oh,
Like, how can you give me an example of
yeah,
how that
yeah, yeah.
changed
Uh,
your life?
let me touch on, because you hit on a very important point. So, look, when we go on vacation, we are kind of letting go. The whole idea of vacation is to let go, right? And have fun and kind of be in a different space. And yeah, we can go to a beautiful place and we feel kind of euphoric. And even when we come home initially, we feel euphoric, but then, quote unquote, it starts to wear off a little bit. Um, the point is, you want to bring the divine presence wherever you are. The whole idea is God. It's not, we had a lady that asked us once, well, I don't know how much time to dedicate to my spiritual life and how much to dedicate to my earth life. I have a lot of responsibilities now. And already she divided the house by the very way she formulated the question. There is no earth life and spiritual life. It's all spiritual. And when you start to realize even the most mundane thing of budget, not mundane, but not that that's mundane, but the day-to-day of budget presentation, meetings, whatever it is you got to do, bring the divine into those experiences. Don't separate them, and you won't feel this disconnect as much. The key that you're really bringing that inner life into your outer is your life in itself starts to become a prayer. And wherever you go, it's kind of just there, whether you're on the East Coast, the West Coast, the North Coast, the South Coast, whatever coast you're on, that's where you're at. I'll tell two quick things here. When I was in the film biz, I was a line producer on this big um, tourism commercial. And, the state was involved and all that kind of stuff. And line producers got a lot of the nuts and bolts stuff. You got to make sure that that generator is going to be in the set on time and all that kind of stuff. And I walk into this meeting and something went wrong, right? And all the big brass were there. It was this huge emotional storm. And they suddenly turned to me and said, well, what are you going to do about it? I didn't cause it, but they were asking me what it was I going to do about it. And what I remember is I could feel like energetically people were punching me. There was so much emotional, and it wasn't specifically directed at me, but they were so upset. The energy of that upsetness was literally like someone was hitting me. And I've been learning with Barbara about the work, and one of the energies of balance and harmony is an emerald green light. And I had nothing brilliant to say at that moment. But because I was feeling all this energy being directed to me, there was a tendency to react. And I just said, no, I'm just going to keep my balance. And I just envisioned that emerald green in my auric field, especially in the emotional area. And literally within 10 minutes, that emotional storm just blew over. And everybody kind of started figuring out what to do. They got their head back, on their shoulders. And the executive director turned to me and she goes, what the heck just happened? So sometimes simply by not reacting to the craziness going on around you, you are the catalyst for making that change. Now, in working with prosperity, we do have to understand prosperity doesn't start of how much money you have in the bank. That's not where it starts. That's an outer expression of it, but prosperity starts as a state of consciousness. If you are in the consciousness of wealth rather than poverty or lack or limitation, oh, I don't have enough. Listen to what you just were saying, the things that go on in your head. You say, oh, there isn't enough, there isn't enough, and look, you're raising kids, so I'm sure you're making sure there's food on the table for them, that you have these responsibilities as a parent there. So those are all important issues. But even there, you could say, well, God is feeding my children. I am the ambassador of that thing to give them everything they need, all the protection they need, everything else they need. I am the channel of that rather than the source of it. So once you start to realize there's a consciousness and you realize where you are, once you build that consciousness, that prosperity, then it's going to start manifesting. And what I see with a lot of people with prosperity is they just sometimes don't know the simple stuff. They expect, oh, it's just going to come into my lap. And no, you've got to do the things that will make it happen physically. But and also, if you don't understand it, like in the film world, there was some very talented people that weren't really making it because they didn't understand this was show business. Talent is part of it, but you got to have the business savvy too. Why was it that sometimes mediocre talent did very well? Because they know how to handle the business very well, right? So you've got to bring there are laws, right? And there's laws of prosperity. Learn them. It's not some secret mystical thing, just the basic laws, but you've got to apply them. Now, one quick note there, again, so I'm telling a lot of Barbara stories right now, kind of honoring, this has kind of been like a celebration tour of her,
Sure.
of her life and work. I was still, when I met Barbara, as I shared with you, I was still in the film biz. And it is, at least in those days, for me, it was a little bit of a feast or famine. You were working all the time or not at all. And I was in that not working mode right at the moment. And one day, Barbara's looking at the heart chakra, which is where you're manifesting things in your outer world through this part of you. And she saw this turquoise light, the prosperity. Now that at that exact moment, it wasn't manifest. But literally 2 weeks later, I got the most lucrative job offer I'd ever gotten in the business up to that point. So the energy to make that happen, and I was doing the things I needed to do, but you've also got to let the universe come together. You've got to let the energies kind of align and the people and situations. But if you're ready, but the situation is not quite ready, then you've got to be a little bit of patient until everything starts to line up. And it will.
That is where I'm at. Patience, learning patience. And with 3 kids, you have to have patience.
Oh my God. I'm sure. I'm sure. I'm sure.
As I hear them scratching at the door.
They've been patient this whole time. You can't hear it right now.
I'm locked in my big closet. So the laws of prosperity, are those the same as like the Hermetic laws or Hermetic sciences?
No, the Hermetic sciences are, they're amazing. We could do a whole show just on the Hermetic sciences. Yeah. That is one of the most ancient mystical studies of all time. The as above, so below, as below, so above. Those are a whole stream of education. And interesting enough, they did focus a lot on the mind because they understood when you get the mind where it needs to be, the rest of you is going to start to sort of fall into place. So yes, the Hermetic laws included prosperity, but they went beyond that. As a matter of fact, Barbara's first teacher at 11 years old was a Hermetic scientist. And she had these handwritten books. And I heard said, I'm a Hermetic, my mother, my grandmother, all Hermetic sciences. I want to teach you about your gifts. And this was all done in secret. Her day job was to be a theater entrepreneur. She ran a theater stock company. And she secretly called in Barbara one Saturday. And Barbara thought, I'm getting dumped. She doesn't like my acting, And then she said, how do you see things, Barbara? I said, what do you mean? I see like everybody. No, how do you see things? And she goes, she's talking about that. And then Dorothy said, you can see the aura, can't you? And Barbara's jaw dropped. Is that what it's called? Barbara didn't even have a name for it at that. Because in that era, there was no podcast like this. This is a remarkable time that we can be on this public platform like this and speaking about these very sophisticated topics.
Mm-hmm. So I've written down the Hermetic laws just so I can have a daily reminder of them.
You really are very thorough.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important because again, learning how the universe works or functions or what laws it follows can help you be proactive in your life to really be successful, not in business. Well, it can help you be successful in business, but also as a being, a spiritual being, to understand like what's going on in your life. Like the law of correspondence, as above, what is it? As above, so below. Like to me, that is, the inner game, right? Like as you are internally, like that is going to show up externally. Is that like right along with the teaching?
Well, I mean, that is one of the most profound mystical sayings of all time, right? There are multiple levels. As far as the law of correspondence, it's saying that all the planes of consciousness have a certain correlation. They're not disjointed from each other. So in other words, the lessons you're learning here are not just for the earth. You're going to take it into the beyond, even prosperity. There are prosperity principles on the other side too. It's not just here. So
Really?
don't think, oh, I just need it here, I don't need it on the other side. Yes, because if it was disjointed over there, we wouldn't be able to connect with the other side. Now, it may operate on a different level, especially the higher planes you go, but the law of correspondence says there's this continuity through all the planes of consciousness. But that beautiful aphorism, as above, so below as above, also states one of the most essential, because remember, we shared that we started to talk about there's this higher self above our head, the above. That's already in a state of divine awareness. But that doesn't mean the below is in that state. So one of the signs of spiritual maturity is when the above is mirrored in the below, and when the below is as the above. So in a sense, when you sort of become your higher nature, then you have reached spiritual maturity. And what you're trying to align with is how am I? See, the whole thing is, okay, we go to our higher self, we get an idea and inspiration, but then we have to use it. We have to come back down. You were asking me, how is it on my daily life? Well, the whole idea is that, yes, you may go to the mountaintop and get the great blessing, but then you've got to come down from the mountaintop. And the goal is, how well do you apply it in your life when the higher isn't right behind you? Do you just go play in another ballpark and forget everything that you just learned? Or do you say, no, I stay right on cue? So that the real test, one of the things we say in the meditation, okay, you can bring in that turquoise ray of abundance and supply into your aura, start building up that power more, but you have to apply it. If you go back to worrying about your finances, you've just derailed the energies you brought in. Barbara would say it's like taking 2 steps forward and taking 2 steps backward. You're going nowhere. So if I brought in that turquoise, I have to be that prosperity. So if those little gremlins are saying, oh, no, not enough, you got to shake them loose and say, yes, there is enough. And yes, affirmations do help there. They're not the inspiration itself, but if you notice that mind's getting a little squirrely, even driving to work or whatever, oh my gosh, this is never going to happen. No, I am perfect. Power, ability, success. It can help to sort of redirect the mental currents in more constructive lines.
I have to ask now, since you talk about different planes of existence, have you ever experienced any of those planes of existence or dimensions?
Yes, I have. That's a whole other show.
Come on.
Yeah. We actually have a book around that called Heaven in Your Spiritual Evolution. Look, the other side isn't one place, and you kind of hinted at that. It's many places. In my father's house are many mansions. And the other side is multiple. Okay, there are multiple places, meaning there are actual places you can actually go to, but they're also states of consciousness. And they are in an ascending order. So Earth is a little bit like a melting pot of consciousness. You could have the consciousness of Mahatma Gandhi, and physically that person could be standing to the consciousness of an Adolf Hitler, right? Vastly different levels of consciousness, but in the physical plane, they could literally be in the same room. On the other side, it's a little different. You're going to find yourself in a plane of consciousness similar to the vibration you're at right now. So you're not going to suddenly become a saint on the other side. This is why, and Yogananda would say it, the goal is to see God face to face while in a physical body. I didn't mean a literal face, but he meant find that God presence here, so that will help you on the other side. Now, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, like you say, you're visiting these planes of existence on the other side, and you're still here. So you are you
Well,
doing
you're going
this?
out of your body. You're going out. And now this is a big question people ask. If you're going to heaven, even the ancient days, are you going in your physical body? Well, that brings up the topic. St. Paul talked about there's the body of corruption, the body of incorruption. So when we go to the other side, we actually have a spiritual body we travel to. Mystics would say that's actually the real body. It looks like you. If I saw you, let's say in your astral body right now, I'd recognize you. You'd recognize me if I came in my astral body. But the goal is that's the body we'll take with when it's our time to leave this earth. But because we come from those spiritual worlds and we're going back to them, we're still connected to them here. And there is a process where you can go to these worlds. And periodically, we are all actually taken there at night while we sleep. Now, when I first started with Barbara, there was a technique she was teaching, not so much to bring back memory from the other side, but to connect with it more. And yes, I did have this experience of being in this extremely idyllic place with, hills and buildings, but it was a beautiful setting. But what was so fantastic was the vibration there. The God vibration was literally in the atmosphere. So there was not a question whether God existed. It just was all around you. And when I came back, that was a nighttime experience. I was on a high for 3 days. It was a transformative moment for me. But later I realized they weren't just giving me a nice experience. They were teaching. These are always teaching things. They were saying, you got to take that experience, that vibration that you experienced there, but you've got to establish it here. You've got to build up that kind of power, that kind of, awareness of the divine here. So that, and that's a little bit like the above and the below. The vibrations here, the vibrations here, then they become sort of similar. So yes, it's, we don't advise people just to try to do astral travel, because all they're doing is just wandering around the earth plane. And there are a lot of risks around that. But we're all given sometimes this marvelous experience. Well, for example, okay, you're married, you've had children. You may not have remembered this, but shortly before you started, trying to have children, you and your wife were taken to the other side and you met the souls that were going to be your children. And there was an agreement to say, okay, yeah, you're going to be a daddy, you're going to be my mommy, I'm going to be your son, I'm going to be your daughter. It was agreed before even conception took place. So that's part. So you can't say you didn't pick your parents or you didn't pick your children. You did. Now they show the karmas and why that had to happen and all that kind of stuff. But there's a greater process that's going on at all times. So we do have a connection to the other side. And periodically in our sleep, we're taken there, whether it's for healing or guidance or direction. Because again, we're of those worlds. We got to remember, we actually know those worlds better than this one. We just forget it when we're immersed in physical nature. And I'm reminded here of Yogananda's teacher, Sri Yukteswar, when he died and he came back. There's that great chapter in autobiography where he talks about what happened on the other side. And one of the things I always remember there, he was talking about his experiences in the astral worlds. And he said, the entire physical universe hangs like a basket on the tree of the astral universe. So that tells you, as vast as this physical universe, the spiritual one is far more vaster.
Sure. Yeah, he was explaining, like, what realm he was at now. Like, he was, like,
Yeah.
I guess, the overseer or some astral
He went to
plane.
astral, he went to the cause. Yeah. So he was a busy guy. And he was also trying to reassure Yogananda was in such grief that he's okay,
Yeah, but he materialized his, like, real body, right? Like, his gross
Oh, no,
body, he came back.
not his physical body. It was his spiritual body. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, he can, the spiritual body can appear physical, if they want to. But he was trying to basically tell Yogananda he's doing okay. Because Yogananda was in such grief. As a matter of fact, his disciples were worried about him. Because after Sri Yukteswar died, he would go into such, almost like they said, like trance-like states. They thought he was dying. So his life changed very much when Sri Yukteswar passed on.
Sure.
The Easterns, and this is something Barbara cautioned. He said sometimes they treated their guru. It was almost like they worshiped their gurus, and she would always say, "Don't worship me. If you value what I'm saying, practice the teachings. I'm a human being like everybody else." So yes, they're great souls and things like that, but we're finding the divine. That's what we're really aiming for in all things.
Have you met any of those gurus or mystics in the astral realm?
No, I have not yet. Barbara did see Yogananda though.
Really?
Not in the spiritual realm. She went actually to this place here. There's a he has a home here, and she went. I guess at the time, I don't know if you still can. You could go into his bedroom, or not into it, but like a museum, you could go to where his bedroom was, and she saw him sitting in a meditation, and he didn't look happy. She said he was upset about something. So this was many years ago, but I think SRF did go through some difficult days here and there. But I have to praise, a lot of spiritual organizations don't do well after the founder dies. They kind of slide downhill. But SRF has done, an admirable job of really continuing to honor the traditions and not just keep the memory alive, but keep the teachings alive. And that is not easy to do. I think some of that has to do with he had a monastic order. He had people that were just, that's all, they're completely dedicated to that. It happened with like Buddha. When Siddhartha became Buddha, he didn't just go wandering around talking about his ideas. The first thing he did was organize his monks to get the system going, right? So there would be a heritage beyond his life. And then they all together, they started reaching out and building the movement.
Mhm. Well, I think we're gonna have to have another conversation because there's so many questions that I have about the astral realm and just different subjects that we just touched upon here.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
Dimitri, this has been amazing. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think you and I could have further conversations
yeah,
for
yeah.
years. And yeah, how can people find you and learn more about your organization?
Well, we are, if you happen to be local to Southern California, we are in Encinitas, this beautiful beach town. But we've been doing online classes since 2006, long before the Zoom era. And they're joining from all over the world. It's very exciting. The Institute's name is Spiritual Arts Institute, and the website is spiritualarts.org. We are a nonprofit. So please check us out. The books are available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere you buy your books. And I want to leave just with one thing, do all you can to make your spiritual growth, your spiritual life, an even higher priority.
Mm, I love that. Dimitri, thank you so much for taking the time, my friend.
Okay, thank you. All right, good luck with everything. Thank you for all the good work you're doing.